Hello, my name is Bree, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel, Breezy Banter, the place where I talk about the things I want to talk about. In today's video, I'm doing a continuation of the series that I have here on my channel, which is basically talking about new makeup releases and, for the most part, talking myself out of buying them. I think this video is going to be a good one, in particular because there have been quite a few things that have come out recently that have caught my eye, and one thing in particular that I'm very much trying to talk myself out of buying because I've been thinking about it every day for the past several days. And we're starting to get into both Halloween makeup as well as like holiday releases too. And I know this seems to be a time in which the makeup lover in a lot of people really comes out. And for whatever reason, that seems to be true of myself this year. I find that I tend to be much more into makeup in like the springtime, but I've really been enjoying some of the releases that have come out. So with all of that said, I hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and let's get into it. So I have two Instagram accounts open up on my computer, and I'll just be going through the items that I pre-selected before starting this video. So the two Instagram accounts that I pull from are Trend Mood and Makeup on Your Radar 2. So the first item here is a Glow Squad Amazonian Clay Face Palette. It's an all-in-one blush and highlighter palette to elevate your look and give cheeks an illuminated flush of color. So this is a release from Tarte, and I have to say, for the most part, I just like ignore Tarte as a company. I think I own one product from them. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's like a liquid blush kind of highlighter that I actually quite enjoy, but for the most part, I find Tarte to be very expensive. And for neutrals, like although I do wear neutrals in my day-to-day life, that just tends to not be the makeup that I'm like really excited for. And so spending a lot of money on neutrals it's just hard for me to do. But for whatever reason, these quads, in particular the darker one, which like I don't know how well that would work on my skin, but these have my attention, and I'm trying to rack my brain as to why that is. I think the colors are just really, really nice. Again, they are neutral. However, the kind of plum color in the darker one is a bit of like a punch, and the almost red, like, I don't know if I'd call that a coral red, but kind of like a deep red in the darker one as well, just seems like they would be, those two colors, those two blush colors seem like they would be lovely, I think. Both on lighter skin as well as on darker skin. I haven't tried like a powder blush from Tarte before, so I don't know how well these would blend out. I don't know if, like I said, if these would work on my skin at all. These are described as a blush and highlighter palette, and in the darker one, which is the one I'm more inclined to buy, the darker highlighter I suspect would be more of a bronzer, but I don't need a bronzer. I certainly don't need a glowy bronzer, which is what this looks like. But the other highlighter, again, I think just looks nice. I think I am able to talk myself out of this one. At the very least, I think I would need to swatch this in store to see how it would perform, particularly on my skin. For the lighter one, I think it looks perfectly fine. I think the bronzer, again, it's not a bronzer, I guess it's a blush. That blush looks very orange to me, and that isn't usually what I go for. I think the two highlighters look lovely. I think the blush is a color that I already have, so that's why I'm less tempted by that one. The other thing about these products is they are $45 each, and I suspect in Canadian dollars it's probably going to be about $65, which is just a lot of money. And although you're getting 4 products, that's like $16.25 per item. I don't know if I would buy these individual shades at $16 a piece. So putting them all together in one is perhaps not the best deal. Like, you would almost hope that when you purchase something bigger, you do get a bit of a deal in terms of not being able to pick the colors that you want, it being prepackaged like this. You're buying more of them, so it's like bulk, but bulk for the store to make, not bulk necessarily as an individual. And that just doesn't seem to be the case here. So I think I could talk myself into buying one of these highlighters or blushes for $16 each. It's almost like I wish I could take that dark purple and the lightest highlighter in the darkest palette and buy that for $32. I think that I would be very happy with. But buying all four, I don't think I can really justify. The next product that I want to talk about is the limited edition palette inspired by the viral Moon Dust shade Space Cowboy. So there are two items here. One is the Moon Dust Space Cowboy Glitter Eyeshadow Quad, which is $39, and the Moon Dust Space Cowboy Glitter Eyeshadow Palette, which is $49. And I wanted to talk about this because I already talked about this in another post, and I think I successfully talked myself out of it in that, particularly for the Star palette, storing that seems like a nightmare. These colors are, again, very basic, and spending a lot of money on basic colors isn't something that I tend to want to do. And yet, when I was scrolling through Trend Mood and I saw this picture again, I was like, oh, like, that's really pretty. And so I don't know if it's just neutrals that are calling to me at this point in time, and upon re-seeing this with fresh eyes, maybe I was more into it. That said, I stand by what I said for the Star palette, which is those 5 colors in that packaging is not something that I need or want to store. For the quad, although it's inspired by the Moon Dust shade Space Cowboy, and they call it the Space Cowboy Glitter Eyeshadow Quad, it's not that shade. And so although I think these are nice, I also think I'm drawn to its neutral appeal, in which I can see myself using this like day after day after day, but I already have shadows in my collection that I can use day after day after day. And at $39 for a quad, which if I do the conversion to Canadian dollars, it's probably like $55. $55 for 4 shades is a lot. That's getting into like special shade territory. So I don't need this, but dang, I am drawn into this. And next is the Bio Face Glue, which are the new products by NYX Cosmetics. This includes the Face Glue Gripping Primer and the Face Glue Setting Spray. This is amusing to me because I can see someone hypothetically making a comment along the lines of, I want it to be like glue, I want it to hold my makeup like glue, and then NYX taking that literally and then creating these products. I have no desire whatsoever to purchase these. I don't use setting sprays. I have occasionally used primers in the past, but I don't feel the need to pick up this one. That said, I am curious to hear reviews of them and if they do work, particularly the primer. So I'm just reading it now, and it says it drenches skin with hydration, which makes me think that it will be a hydrating product. And for my primers, the primers that I've used before that I've really enjoyed all came from Milk, and they were supposed to be like mattifying, and those worked quite well for my skin. And so I suspect that this wouldn't work. It is a bit odd to me because I would think that these would be mattifying, but I guess just like the imagery, and when I think of glue, I think of like dry. And although you can have moisturized matte skin, that is just the association that I make. One other thing to mention is that in both the primer and the setting spray, they both have maple syrup, which interesting. That also reminds me of a time in my life when I was like 14 years old, reading the magazine 17, and they're like face masks you can make with ingredients from your kitchen or something. Some of which, like, I think there is some evidence for some of the properties in some products that you can find in your kitchen, but that's like not necessarily the ideal way to do a face mask like that. That's what this is reminding me of, but like maple syrup seems like, okay, it's sticky. That feels like it would clog pores. And I would also just be nervous about like being outside and there being bugs. I understand that you're not like literally drenching your face in maple syrup, but I have questions. Let's say that. Okay, next I want to talk about the Blursh Pressed Duo Highlighter Palette by Made by Mitchell. Again, for whatever reason, which I cannot figure out, I like this. I think the packaging is horrendous. I will not be purchasing it, most likely because of that reason, except, well, these are $26, and I think doing the conversion is probably like $35, which actually isn't too bad. I think the colors that they made, the colors that are paired together, it seemed like they are quite nice. There's a purple one, or like a purple leaning one, that seems beautiful. There's a very cool toned, almost like gray silver one that seems quite interesting. I think what's going on here is I'm drawn to the pairings and then turned off by the packaging. If these were 75% of that price, let's say they were like $25 Canadian and they came in a rectangular packaging, I think I'd be much more tempted by this. As it is, I think the product itself looks nice. I just cannot stand the packaging. Next is the Lightwork palette, Lightwork 6 Freedom palette. I have a few things to say about this. So let me read the description first. It says it features 18 shades and 9 finishes and 3 curated color stories that can be used all over the eyes, face, and lips. With the special packaging, it's a magnetic stackable palette that can be unpacked and stacked and taken on the go in its leather case to-go bag. So first off, I think the shadows themselves look lovely. Don't hate the idea behind it. What I do dislike is some of the marketing that applies to a very niche community, particularly like makeup artists, and people then thinking that it applies to them. So if you are tempted by this palette, which I can understand why, I think these shadows look incredible. I have a rather extensive collection of multi-chrome and duochrome shadows, so I can easily say, like, I've already done my work in terms of deciding what I want to buy, and I bought those, and so I don't need this. It would almost certainly be a repeat of shades that I already own. But if you are compelled by this, I would encourage you to ask yourself, A, are these colors that you want? B, are these colors that you own already? Because if you want them, chances are you might already own them. If you don't own them, is there a reason? Have you talked yourself out of it previously? Or did you decide that perhaps you realized that you wouldn't use those items as much as you thought you would? And if the transportability of this product appeals to you, also ask yourself, how likely is it really that you are going to put these palettes in a leather carrying case and take it with you? I guess I just struggle to see the average everyday consumer really ever doing that. Like, are you going to take a multi-chrome palette in a leather carrying case to work? I would think no. And I'm sure there's like a person that does that. That's fine. In which case, for them, like, power to them. This was made for you. I guess I just struggle to see like a big part of this palette's marketing is it being stackable, it being magnetic, having the carrying case, but I just don't think that that's actually that useful for the average consumer. Okay, next is the Milani Cheek Kiss Liquid Blush and Glow, which looks like it's perhaps attempting to dupe the Charlotte Tilbury liquid blushes that I can't remember the name of. If they had this in a color that I liked, like a light purple, I think I would be very tempted to purchase this. For whatever reason, I do at least enjoy the idea of this particular format for a blush, like having the puffer tip. And I tend to enjoy liquid. Well, I really enjoy all forms of blush in terms of liquid, cream, or powder, but I do enjoy liquid blushes. This will be available at the drugstore, so it's easily accessible to someone like myself. And the price isn't that bad, $13. In Canadian, it's probably like 17 or 18, which I guess is on the more expensive side for drugstore now that I think about it. I feel like Milani tends to be one of the brands that is more expensive. And while I don't hate the shade range, again, it's just not in colors that I would tend to go for. I mentioned the purple color earlier, but I also think perhaps if they had like a cherry red, I would be very tempted by that as well. As it stands, I don't tend to wear like muted browns or muted pinks pretty much ever. So this is an easy pass for that reason, but I like the idea of this in theory. Next is the Dark Academia collection by Holo Taco. I've never tried any Holo Taco products, but there have been several that I've been very much interested in and have decided not to purchase. Basically, they had a few multi-chrome ones that were really beautiful. And I think they also had a pastel collection that I thought looked incredible. And then they tend to do these kind of murky isn't necessarily the right word, like desaturated also isn't like quite right. I'm trying to think of what the word is. Like not primary. I can get a bright red nail polish at the drugstore. I can do that. That's not that hard. But I think what Holo Taco does really well is they have those non-primary colors that I love. I love in makeup and I love in nail polish. So looking at this collection, the sparkle ones I'm not that interested in, but looking at that green, like that like pine green, the gray looks beautiful. And then this almost like oxblood, like deep mahogany color, absolutely stunning. So I won't be purchasing these at this time. I have one bottle of nail polish and I just don't paint my nails that often as it is. But bravo, I think this looks incredible. And yeah, I love the colors that Holo Taco tends to come out with. I feel like there's a lot of thought that goes behind it. And I feel like this is also particularly fitting for the fall. I don't make decisions on what I'm gonna wear in terms of makeup or nail polish or anything like that based on season. I do what I want, but I do recognize that this is a nice fall release. Next, I will very briefly talk about the new makeup release by Odin's Eye Cosmetics. And I'm kind of amused because just before I made this video, I was on my computer and I was on YouTube and I was watching some video, and then I went to a new page and my notifications shot up to like 11 and I was like, but I was just on YouTube, like what happened? And when that happens, what that usually means is either a music artist that I follow have released like each individual song in an album, or there's a release by Odin's Eye. There are a handful of other companies in which that's the case, but Odin's Eye seems to be like the worst of them, where basically you can tell that they've been told you can post your video on this date at this time, and then they all do that. And as a viewer, it's really overwhelming, I think, to just get like bombarded with like 15 videos from people that I normally watch all about the same thing. I don't end up watching them all. I'll usually watch one video just to see like swatches and see what's going on, see people's thoughts, or at least see that person's thoughts. And that's what I did this time. And I just have to say, I'm not intrigued by this at all. I don't like the color stories separate or together, really. I think the warmer toned side of the palette is serviceable. I think like if I owned it, I would use it. I would have a use for it. But I also wouldn't, that's not the way that I would put it together. And the cooler tone side, I just don't think looks very nice. There's like 2 shades there that I think are pretty, and the rest, it doesn't feel cohesive to me, and it feels repetitive. It's not interesting, and not because there's a lack of color or shine or anything. Something about this just feels off. It says it's $57, which is expensive. Again, converting that to Canadian, that's probably like $75. I wouldn't spend $75 on this. I'm pretty sure when I bought my Natasha Denona Glam palette in the midi size, like that was around $75. I could be completely wrong, but I just don't like this. And I really just wanted to say I was overwhelmed by the amount of content that was made about this palette. And then lastly, the thing that I was most excited to talk about is the Cosmic Brushes Undergrowth palette. It says, our new 20 shade palette features grungy, murky tones inspired by the untamed beauty of woodland landscapes. With 12 mattes and 8 metallics of those 3 are shifty shades, 2 multichromes and 1 duochrome. And this is priced at $38, which again, doing the conversion, like 55-ish, which is a good price. And I have been on the Cosmic Brushes website, and I put this into my cart and I looked at how much shipping was. I think it was either $15 or $20 shipping in USD. So again, doing that conversion, all in all, this would probably be about a $75 Canadian palette. But I would be willing to spend $75 on this in a way that I'm not for Odin's Eye, because when I look at this palette, every single color seems cohesive. Like this color story is cohesive. I think I would use every single color. I can already envision in my head like 12 different looks I could do with this. And that's not even like with me really thinking about it. I'm sure I could come up with like, I'm not even that creative when it comes to coming up with color stories, but I feel like if I put my mind to it, I could come up with like 30. And these just are the eyeshadow tones that if I'm not going for a neutral, this is what I want to wear. I love murky greens. They described it, grungy, murky. And that's exactly what I like. And I've made other videos on this channel where I've talked about how for the longest time, this is the color story that I really, really wanted. And I was able to talk myself out of several palettes sort of in this color scheme that were never quite right. There was like the Ace Beauté Tropical Vibes palette, I believe, the Give Me Glow Juicy Olive, and there are a handful of others. But this is like the one, and I can tell that I'm very much intrigued by it. It is currently on my wish list, so it will stay there until I either purchase it or am able to more successfully talk myself out of it. Perhaps Cosmic Brushes will do like a sale during Black Friday, in which case I might consider purchasing it. If not, like maybe I'll ask for it for Christmas. But I do have to say that I love this palette. I think as I mentioned in other videos that I've made, I also, because I was able to talk myself out of so many of those palettes, what I ended up doing was purchasing 6 singles from Dandelions Cosmetics. And I love those shades, but they were all mattes, which was on purpose because I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have quite a few multi-chrome and duochrome shadows that I figured I could just pair them together. And that is true. And that's the primary way that I'm able to talk myself out of this at this point. But I really like this palette. I was gonna say I don't have all of these colors. I do have several of these colors, but dang, it's so pretty. And I've seen some looks on Instagram. I don't think I've seen it reviewed yet on YouTube. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I've only seen looks on Instagram, and all of them look so beautiful. I've seen a wide range of skin tones, ethnicities, etc. using this palette, and the looks that they create look so good on all of them. And so that just makes me really excited. Yeah, I will stop there because otherwise I will gush over this palette for another 10 minutes and just keep saying the things that I've already said. But that is the item that's really pulling to me. This, as well as the Tarte 4-pan palette, like face palette, which I'm fairly sure that that's not going to make it onto my wish list. But dang, this Cosmic Brushes palette, it's got me by a chokehold. So with that in mind, I think that's it for me today. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What products that I talked about today are you most interested in? Is there anything that I didn't mention that has your eye? Please let me know. I would love to hear about it. Before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank you for taking time out of your day to spend watching this video. It really means a lot to me. Thank you. Bye.